Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church's virtual worship. I am the Reverend Carol Bedeau, and I am privileged to serve Westside as minister. During this unprecedented time, we are spending all of our time and energy together online. So, welcome to our worship service. Westside is a community where everyone is welcome, regardless of your particular theological perspective or your cultural beliefs. We are a community that is more concerned with how you show care and concern for others than with what your particular theology is. We are also a community that strives to make the world a better place by affirming and promoting the principles of Unitarian Universalism, including affirming that all people deserve a chance to have equal justice, equal access to resources, and an equal opportunity to learn and grow. We also support protecting the earth. And of course, this is just as important right now as is protecting one another. We need to take care of our natural environment so that we can find it easier to take care of ourselves. So, the values of Unitarian Universalism are at the center of what we do. Today's service is about how we show love and care in a time like this that's so challenging and so difficult. This quote is from William Makepeace Thackery. It is best to love wisely, no doubt, but to love foolishly is better than not to be able to love at all. In these times when physical contact can feel dangerous, and when social distancing is not just the norm, but it's actually a requirement, what does it mean to show love and care to one another and to be connected to our natural world? We know that it's really important to stay in touch with each other and to try to do whatever we can to counter the isolation that is required of us right now. Many of us are being pretty creative about how to do that. We're learning new technology skills, we're doing a lot of Facebooking and Zooming, and finding creative ways to stay in touch with each other. But the truth of the matter is, this can kind of be exhausting. It's exhausting to learn all these new skills and try all these new things. We're used to doing things a different way. So, how do we stay in touch and love one another wisely in this challenging time and also take care of ourselves? So, that's our topic for today. But before we begin, I've got a few announcements for you. First, the Board of Trustees has in fact voted that the church will be closed through the first Sunday in May. We hope to open on May 3rd, but the board will be revisiting that decision depending on how things go in the next couple of weeks. We have our usual schedule of activities you can find on our Facebook page and on our website. The links for these various activities. We have Sunday morning virtual worship at 11 a.m., children's programming at 11:30, and virtual coffee hour at noon. Also, during the middle of the week, you can check in with our spiritual practices group and also some other activities that are going on. So check out our website, check out our Facebook page for the exact dates and times. We are all adapting. So things are changing a little bit each week as we get a little bit more skillful about how to do virtual connecting. We're learning things, we're developing new tools. This is also really important for the other thing I want to tell you about, which is it is time for our annual Canvas campaign. This is how we support ourselves financially. In addition to our building rentals and some other activities that we do have a regular pledge campaign where friends and members of the community pledge to support us during the coming year. Typically, we'd be doing this in person, but this year, of course, we're going to do it virtually. So, in the coming weeks, you will be seeing a lot of information about some special events and some special activities for our virtual Canvas campaign. But save the date. We will be having our virtual Canvas kickoff party on Friday, April 17th at 7 p.m. So be looking for information to come about that. It'll be an exciting and fun way for us to try getting together. All right, so let's begin to prepare for our actual time of worship. We're going to begin our time of reflection today with a little bit of meditation to go along with inviting our bowl to sound. So I invite you to take a deep breath, settle into your seat, and relax. If you feel so inclined, close your eyes, allow your eyes to rest on something that is soothing, calming, or peaceful to you. And I will invite our bowl to sound and then guide us through a minute or two of meditation. So just taking a couple of deep breaths. Call to mind the people most important to you, the people that you love, maybe the animals that you love. Call to mind those beings that help you feel centered and at peace, that make you laugh, inspire you. Call to mind those creatures and beings that give you joy. And call to mind the places, maybe the places on earth, beautiful places in nature or places of that you think of as home, places that are comforting to you or that bring you joy or peace or inspiration. And just imagine that no matter how able you are to be with those people or animals or places, imagine that you can still feel connected to them. And as you breathe in and out, just take a moment to imagine that the breath is connecting you. You know, we have this feeling of isolation right now, many of us, but the truth is we're all still incredibly connected, as the virus makes very clear to us. The connection between us is almost impossible to eliminate. So feel that deep connection through the breath. We're all breathing the same air. The air that I breathe out is being breathed in by the trees in my yard, and air that the trees breathe out is being breathed in by my neighbors. So just notice that the breath connects us all. And allow yourself to feel that deep connection, even as you sit alone or with one or two other people in the room you're in. We use these words to light our chalice this morning. May we be reminded of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring out gifts of love and service to the community of life. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to this community, to each other around the globe, and in fact, to the whole universe. So, to love wisely. I introduced today's topic with a quote by British 19th century novelist William Makepeace Thackery. It is best to love wisely, no doubt, but to love foolishly is better than not to be able to love at all. You may have heard of Thackeray, but really not much know much about him. That was certainly true for me. I will openly admit that I didn't really know who he was. I'd heard his name. And I ran across this quote during some of my internet searching this week. I know that we're all doing a lot of that. I was a little fascinated by him, so I decided to spend some time learning about him. Turns out William Makepeace Thackeray is most famous for a serialized novel that he produced over a couple of years in small installments. It was called Vanity Fair. It was published in the late 1840s, and it was a satire criticizing the lives of wealthy English aristocracy and their superficial lifestyle. Now, the novel takes its name from a section in John Bunyan's older work, A Pilgrim's Progress. And what it describes is an actual fair, a public fair of vanity, a place which represents the human attachment to worldly goods and worldly values and physical pleasures. The quote that I read to you from Thackeray is actually from a less famous piece of work, The History of Pendennis, which deals with basically the same themes: superficial society, the dangers of attachment to earthly pleasure, and the costs of foolish and frivolous behavior. Well, in this light, perhaps Thackeray is trying to tell us to be guided by love, despite our human foolishness, despite our failures, despite our imperfections. I haven't read either of these novels, I admit it, but I do have a sense of the genre he was writing in and the time. He was a contemporary and is considered a match to Charles Dickens in that they were both criticizing Victorian society. And I also have a sense of how these themes are coming up for us today in our modern global crisis. Just what, we might ask, is foolish or frivolous behavior in a time of pandemic? I know that I personally have been struggling a little bit to decide which actions are wise and which might be unwise. So this week I had planned to do some hiking with my family. We gathered outside last week, about 6 of us, to walk together in a state park, but a few days later this week, I've started to reconsider doing it again. Is it wise? It certainly felt loving to be close to people I care about who are all feeling kind of isolated and uncertain. But is it loving to gather in a small group and spend time together? Does doing it outside make it okay? What about everyone else in the park? Is a few feet of trail between us enough, or do we need to get much farther apart than that? And just how frivolous is that kind of social gathering right now? It's really a core question, isn't it? Just how necessary is human contact? Right now, the question of how to be loving, how to connect to other humans, how to show care, and how to care for ourselves also, these are questions that are up for some review. We thought, 5 weeks ago, we had a clear understanding of some of those things, but now it's not quite so clear. Our normal modes of interacting are disrupted, and we're having to figure out how to create new ways of being connected in intimate ways. And let's not be too glib about all the social media and the technology as an answer to that, because frankly, it's exhausting. Technology is awesome and it's wonderful, and it can also be exhausting. Also, learning all these new things is really demanding. I deeply appreciate Zoom meetings, and I am really getting tired of Zoom meetings. I greatly value the internet and email, and I'm tired of reading email and doing everything by email. When we're able to connect in person, one to one, there's something powerfully kinesthetic about our relating, and we're missing that right now. Our connections right now are virtual mostly, and that might satisfy our hearts and minds, but our bodies know the difference. We need hugs. We need physical affection. We need to see each other's smiles in person and to wipe away each other's tears with physical hands. We need to hear the tone of someone's voice up close, and we need to just sense their physical presence. And we need some variety in that context. So being with just one or two or a few very close people, it's great, but it can also be stressful and wear on us. So this is a challenging time when we need to be in touch, literally in touch, but that's competing with the important values of safety and community health. So how do we decide what it means to love wisely and connect wisely rather than to do so foolishly? So Thackeray urges us to love wisely. And one of the most essential components of wisdom is good judgment. We all need to be able to discern or assess for ourselves the pros and cons of different actions. We need to be able to weigh the benefits and risks of where to go, how to get our needs met, who to connect with. But one of the challenges of this time is that too often good judgment turns into judging ourselves and others. And that's not very loving. What I mean by this is that rather than simply assessing the pros and cons of a situation or action, we can have a tendency to put value judgments of good or bad on people, including ourselves. Is someone who goes to the grocery store too much a bad person? Are people who hike in too tight a close proximity fools for taking a risk that we may not think is worth it? When we start talking about our collective well being and our interconnectedness with one another, it can be really, really easy to go quickly from assessing situations to judging other people's worth, their intelligence, and their values. And this is tricky terrain for us. When we feel that our own health and safety are at stake or are threatened by someone else's choices, we can easily slip into judging them. We might see a leader as ignorant or stupid or pig-headed. We might see a family member as foolish or in denial or crazy. And we might judge ourselves too. We might see ourselves as being too emotional right now or too selfish or not helpful enough. There are all sorts of ways that feeling threatened, feeling that we are at risk or vulnerable or in danger, can lead us to making value judgments about ourselves and one another. And we can feel threatened in a wide variety of ways. It isn't just physical danger from illness. One person might prioritize physical health as their greatest vulnerability, but someone else might see their own mental or emotional health as their greatest vulnerability. They might be much more concerned about that than their physical health. So making decisions as a collective can be really challenging. The catch is this: we are all human. We are all imperfect, and there really are not a lot of simple answers right now. We are all just doing the very best we can, and we're all making mistakes. Of course, there are limits to what we can accept as a society. We have to have boundaries. If someone's best, doing their best, includes actually harming others out of lack of knowledge or of ignorance of particulars about the virus or social movements, or if someone's decision to harm someone is not based in actual facts about danger from that person, of course we have to respond quickly and directly to those sorts of actions. And of course, we have to work as a collective to make sound decisions about how to proceed that we can mostly all agree to. We have to function as a community, globally, nationally, and locally. But the truth of the matter is, most of us are not dealing directly with ignorance or prejudice against Asian Americans, but we do all need to be concerned about that and clearly countering such actions. Most of us are not in the position of making political decisions for larger communities, but we need to be expressing ourselves as clearly as possible to our leaders about those decisions. And we all need to be strongly supportive of first responders who are dealing with this pandemic in very up close, personal, and dangerous ways. And of course, we need to be directly in relationship with the people in our lives who are the most challenged: people who are ill, people who are extremely vulnerable, people who are vulnerable emotionally, who are struggling in that way. Most of us, most of the time, are dealing right now with this situation at a greater remove than the first responders and then the people on the front lines politically. But we still have to make decisions that will make a difference in how this all plays out. So, how do we make decisions and take actions to promote loving wisely rather than being foolish? And how do we do that without judging one another and honoring, as we say in our first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person? I don't think there are any easy answers to these questions, which is, of course, part of the reason that the questions exist. We have a tendency to think that easy answers separate wise from foolish. It's really fuzzier than that, isn't it? In most situations, the pros and cons are not starkly weighted in one direction or the other. In most situations, they're more balanced. And that makes the choices harder. So perhaps we need to take some guidance from Thackeray's words. It's better to love foolishly than not to love at all. So let's cut ourselves and each other some slack. We will all make mistakes in this situation. We are all on a very steep learning curve, and we can only do our best. In other words, compassion. Compassion is in order here. We need to be as compassionate as we can while doing our best to adapt to the incredible challenges we're facing right now. This means being compassionate when others are reactive or emotional or struggling. It means speaking kindly when we discuss the situation, because everyone's a little raw and a little vulnerable right now. It means thinking of others when we try to decide about what actions we want to take and discerning what's a desire and what's really a need. And it means accepting the simple truth that we can't get things perfect. Our leaders cannot get things perfect. Our family members and friends cannot get things perfect. There's no ideal trajectory or ideal outcome in this situation. There's just making our way through it together with the loving hope that on the other side we'll help each other rebuild with some new wisdom and some deeper love. So let's meet the challenge with courage and the willingness to change. And let's meet with a renewed commitment to be compassionate to one another, to love as wisely as possible, and when we are inevitably confronted with our own foolishness, to meet that with love as well. So as you go into this week, may compassion for yourself and others be with you, and may you have peace. We extinguish the chalice. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again. Go in peace.